Dr. Ethan Carter had always prided himself on his professionalism. At 36, he had built a respected career as a cardiologist at Riverside Memorial Hospital, a place where his white coat was almost an extension of his identity. Each day was measured in EKGs, test results, and cautious optimism as he navigated the fragile hearts of his patients. Love was something Ethan had placed on a dusty shelf in the back of his mind, convinced he had no room for it between his 12-hour shifts and constant emergencies. That was before Claire Bennett arrived in his life, carried through the ER doors on a stretcher after a dizzy spell that turned out to be something far more complicated. Claire was 29, a graphic designer by trade, known for her easy laughter and free spirit. When she fainted at her office, she thought it was dehydration. Instead, tests showed an arrhythmia requiring close monitoring. Claire had no idea how drastically that diagnosis would change her life, or how her world would intertwine with the quiet, reserved doctor who stepped into her hospital room that first evening. Ethan knocked gently on the door before entering, clipboard in hand. Claire sat upright in the bed, nervously twisting a ring on her finger that turned out to be a simple mood ring, its color shifting wildly as her heart raced. "Ms. Bennett. I'm Dr. Carter," he began, offering a warm but professional smile. "I'll be overseeing your care." Claire looked up at him, taking in his calm presence. He seemed a little older than her, with a kind but guarded expression. "Hi, doctor," she replied softly. "I don't even know why I'm here, really. I mean, I fainted, but I feel fine now." Ethan settled into a chair beside her, explaining gently but firmly that her heart rhythm had become dangerously erratic. She needed observation. Maybe even a minor procedure, depending on how things went. Claire's face fell, and her eyes shone with unspoken fear. Seeing her distress, Ethan's voice softened. "I know this feels overwhelming. But we'll figure it out together, all right?" Something about the word "together" comforted her. It wasn't the clinical detachment she expected. It was human. Over the next few days, Ethan checked in on Claire multiple times. Her rhythm stabilized somewhat with medication, but she still needed a cardiac monitoring device. Claire grew used to the daily routine of vitals and tests, but Ethan's presence made everything easier. He was patient, explaining every procedure in language she could understand. And while he always maintained a respectful distance, Claire noticed tiny moments of unexpected tenderness, like the way he'd hold her wrist for a pulse just a little longer than strictly necessary, or the rare smile that crept onto his face when she cracked a silly joke. At night, Claire lay awake in her hospital bed, thinking about Ethan. She told herself it was just a silly crush, brought on by stress and vulnerability. He was her doctor. Off limits. And surely he saw her as nothing more than a case file. But one afternoon changed things between them forever. Claire had been alone in her hospital room sketching on her tablet, trying to stay sane, when her monitor suddenly blared a shrill alarm. A premature heartbeat, sharp and painful, gripped her chest. The next moment, Ethan was there, blue scrubs streaked with the urgency of someone who had dropped everything to respond. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his fear. "Claire, look at me," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're going to be okay. I'm right here." The nurse adjusted the monitor as Ethan guided Claire through slow, steady breaths, coaching her back to calm. When the rhythm normalized, the weight of what could have happened settled over both of them like a heavy fog. Claire was shaken, tears pooling in her eyes. Ethan hesitated, then reached out and squeezed her hand. For a moment, he forgot about lines and rules and just let himself be human. That simple contact changed something fundamental. Claire saw the man behind the lab coat, saw the concern etched on his face, and realized it was more than just professional. And Ethan, for the first time in years, felt his carefully built walls crack. In the following days, they could no longer deny the growing closeness. Ethan tried to maintain a respectful distance, but Claire's kindness and humor slipped past his defenses again and again. They'd talk for hours in the evenings about her art, about his love of jazz, about anything but the medical charts taped to her bed. It was wrong, Ethan told himself. Doctors weren't supposed to feel this way about patients. but the truth of it burned too brightly to ignore. Claire brought out a part of him he'd buried beneath years of duty and detachment. She reminded him he was more than a doctor. He was a man, capable of loving and being loved. Their unspoken bond deepened until it felt electric. Ethan would walk into the room and Claire's heart would skip, not in the dangerous way that needed a cardiology consult, but in the sweet, painful flutter of a crush turned into something more. As the day of her minor surgery approached, the mood shifted. Claire had to have a small device implanted to help regulate her heartbeat. She was terrified, and Ethan could see it. He tried to be clinical, but the evening before her procedure, he found himself lingering at her bedside far longer than any other patients. "You're going to do great," he assured her, and she tried to smile. "I know," she whispered. I feel like I might not see you after this. What if I go home, and that's it?" Ethan swallowed hard. That should have been the natural outcome. Patient goes home, case closed. But the thought of never seeing Claire again made something twist painfully in his chest. "You'll see me," he said, surprising even himself. "Even after you leave." Claire's eyes widened, searching his face for meaning. "Are you saying?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I'm saying you're important to me, Claire. More than I should admit." Her pulse leaped on the monitor, and they both laughed a little. "You're going to set off my alarms again," she teased, and Ethan smiled, the moment tinged with relief. The next morning, the surgery went perfectly. Claire was safe, stable, out of the woods. In the days that followed, her discharge date arrived, and Ethan came to see her one last time as her doctor. It was bittersweet, signing her paperwork, wishing her luck. But as he handed her the aftercare instructions, he slipped in a small note with his personal cell number, breaking a rule he had followed his entire career. Claire clutched the paper like a lifeline. "I'll call," she promised. "Please do," he replied softly. And so began the next chapter. Over the weeks after her discharge, they started texting, at first about symptoms and medication, totally above board. But quickly it shifted. They shared music links, memes, silly jokes. Soon they were talking late into the night, as if neither wanted to let go of the connection forged under fluorescent hospital lights. Ethan worried constantly about crossing lines, but he also knew Claire had been discharged, was no longer under his active care, and was fully capable of consenting to whatever might grow between them. One Saturday afternoon, he finally asked if she'd like to meet him for coffee. Claire arrived at the small corner cafe looking so alive and well, Ethan felt tears prick at the backs of his eyes.